Good day everyone. So when Kokomi was released, one of her more popular team compositions was the Taser team involving either Shinshu or Beidou, Kokomi, Fischl and Sucrose. Now since this is 2024, we kinda kicked out Shinshu and replaced him with Farina, but this obviously has a couple of implications for the Taser team, and that's why I've decided to make this video to try and give you a bit of an updated guide as to how to play the modern version of Kokomi Taser. In the background you can see some of the builds. They're pretty mediocre, but that's the entire point. Even with mediocre builds, you can still beat the current Spiral Abyss. So when it comes to the Taser team, you would have originally tried to keep Sucrose a bit longer on the field, but with Farina being present, one of the things that you want to try and prioritize is using Sucrose's elemental burst as much as possible, so that when Kokomi takes the field, you can consistently heal up your party, get the massive damage buff, give obviously then Farina's pets the damage buff, and then enable Kokomi to do a lot of damage, a lot more than she could have done originally. Now, one of the amazing things with having Farina in this team comp is that the secret technique that I've developed in terms of my Taser involving the juggling with Sucrose and Kokomi becomes all that more effective. So the idea here is that Sucrose's elemental burst launches the enemies, and Kokomi, whilst taking the field, continuously juggles them so that when they fall, you do, as you can see there, 260,000 damage. This is an advanced Taser team dynamic that is pretty much exclusive to Kokomi and Sucrose. You won't be able to get this done with Kazuha that easily, but what is now really amazing is that because you get such a high damage buff with Farina, you are just doing so much damage to the enemies whilst they're helpless in the air, and when they fall, oh my goodness, they're gonna fall really hard, and that's just one of the cool little things that I love. The other little secret thing is that Farina's pets also enable you to keep the enemy slightly juggled for a bit longer. So don't tell the Fury Crafters and Genshin Impact that, but the combination of your pets targeting the enemies and Kokomi keeping them juggled just means that you'll be able to destroy them so easily. So that is a bit of an advanced technique. It only works against certain enemy types. Obviously you won't be able to launch the big fat chicken here in the background, but all you need to do with him is just one rotation and then just keep on tasering so that you'll have your burst ready for the next floor. Speaking of the next floor, this is now a very good opportunity to demonstrate how the Taser aspect in the Taser team really works. So notice that we've got a couple of related specters here in the background. You'll see that the Electrocharge damage kind of took care of all of the other specters, but it didn't really damage these two Electro specters that much. And it does then go to show you that when it comes to the Taser aspect, when you trigger this Electrocharge reaction by continuously swirling with Sucrose as an on-field driver, the Electrocharged reaction is responsible for quite a bit of the damage. This also explains why when you then use Sucrose and you then use your elemental burst and you continuously swirl, that the damage of the team is a lot higher than you might expect, because all of these small little numbers really start to add up. And if you now mix in a Farina that just super buffs Kokomi, well, that's just gonna mean a lot of pain for the enemies. In the case here in the background, you can see here I'm just playing a bit more conservatively with my burst, trying to do a bit of energy management for the next floor, so don't really take this as a template, but I can assure you that what the enemies have done in terms of, or what the damage that the enemies have taken here in the background wasn't due to just Farina and Kokomi. A lot of the damage that they've taken was just due to the Electrocharge reaction, and hopefully that was kind of made obvious with this bit of sample gameplay. So when it comes to single target teams, the Taser team won't perform as well, mostly because you're not going to generate as many particles for your elemental burst, and because, well, the Electrocharge really works really well when it can bounce between different enemies. But luckily in cases like these, you've got the strong Hydro or the duo core with Farina and Kokomi, as well as the fact that Kokomi and Farina's damage can hit opponents at range, so even against an enemy like this that pretends to like live on the skybox, you can still auto target them, which is just really awesome. Another cool thing about a Taser team is that you can use these characters for their elemental skill. So even if you run out of elemental burst, you can still use all of these characters and get value just by using their elemental skills and standing on field with Sucrose, driving the Taser, and then chipping away at the enemies whilst your elemental burst is charging. This is one of the flexibilities that you can have, so you don't really need to adjust your team's energy recharge when facing against or like off against single targets, because you can just use your elemental skills to drive more home the Taser aspect than the damage aspect. Speaking of the damage aspect, when it comes to Taser teams, there are certain rotations that will give you slightly more damage, but this is often more enemy dependent than really rotation dependent. So what you'll see here in the background is me also like playing a bit depending on what the enemy does. I might delay some of my abilities, I might accelerate when I use some of my abilities, but the core idea still stays the same. You want to try and have as many abilities simultaneously on the enemy as possible, and even if you sometimes have to play a bit out of order, it really is not the end of the world, just because of how all of these small little electrocharge numbers are continuously adding up. This is just like speaks volumes to how strong Fischl is in this core, and how much she also then enables Sucrose to do extra damage with her own high or like large amount of EM. And yeah guys, that is pretty much what I have to say for the Taser team, but I thought, well, let's do a bit of a special run here against the boss at the end. So this boss is not meant to be taken down with Taser. In fact, I wouldn't recommend this for 99% of players unless you're really good and know what you're doing, because a boss like this was designed for you to use Fury or some Geo characters to beat it. But if you want to play against a boss like this, there is a bit of a technique that you can do. You can spam your spacebar or your jump button, and then spam your left click to try and get a low plunge with Arena to try and quickly take care of this boss's shield. And then the other thing you need to be cognizant of is just how this enemy is positioning. And so the idea is if you're going to play with a team that's roughly built like mine, you want to ensure that you can at least take care of half of its health at an instant. One of the things that I've noticed is that if you get staggered continuously, then this boss has a high chance of resetting its shield. So you don't want to do what I did right there. If you do get knocked back, you want to try and recover very quickly with a dash, and then you might even want to hold onto your jump in the air to try and compensate for it. But these are a couple of advanced tactics, and think of this more like a bit of a challenge boss that you can play. Certainly the team has got more than enough damage to deal with the boss, although this boss's mechanics can be a bit frustrating. But once again, the Taser team will be able to beat it very, very quickly. As you can see here, we've got enough time on the clock for 3 rounds. You can do this in 2 rounds, but you'll need to get slightly lucky, and you probably would need better artifacts if I'm really, really honest. But nonetheless, this has been it for my little Taser guide. Hopefully you guys have enjoyed it, as well as some tips and tricks that you don't see from other content creators. In any case, thank you so much for watching, and have a good day.